Hey guys, so first off, I do want to apologize for making this video super late. I know I promised this video to you guys on Wednesday. Um, it is currently not Wednesday as of the time of recording. It is Saturday at 12:25 in the morning, so a little bit late to the party. I want to apologize on that. Um, but I still wanted to make this video for the lab that got canceled this week or last week, depending on how weeks work. At this point, how does a week work? That's a good question. But nevertheless, uh, I wanted to make this video on the first of, I want to say 10 labs for Professor Mead's class. Um, and hopefully this will help. So first things first, if you guys haven't met me, my name is James Jarrow. I am a fourth-year information technology major student here at the University of Central Florida with a minor in mathematics. I'm going to be one of your TAs. In fact, I most likely will be the main TA for your class. And I look forward to working with you guys. And if there's anything I can do to help, please feel free to reach out to me. All my contacts are on the syllabus as well as my office hours. I'm basically going to be available every day of the week, plus any weekends. Plus, I run one of my a Discord. The link is in the announcements. So please, if you have any questions, please don't feel like you're a bother at all. Ask away, and I will do my best to help. So, with all of that out of the way, let's go over our first lab together, called the puzzle problem. So this is the helpful, the unhelpful, and the confused. So in this scenario, the first of many scenarios we're going to toss at you this semester, we're going to have three individuals. Their names are going to be Alice, Bob, and Carol. Supposedly, they're all quote unquote logical thinkers, and we're going to know the following. We're going to know that one person is helpful and will always tell the truth. We're going to know that one person is unhelpful. They're always going to lie. One person is going to be confused, and they're going to always say random statements that are going to be truths or lies. We also know the following. So we know that Alice tells us that Bob is confused. Bob tells us that Alice is unhelpful. And Carol is going to tell us that if Alice is lying, then I am helpful. And we are going to have 4 questions that are based on this lab. For this lab. And so the first question we want to answer to ourselves is the following. So let's pull up a Word document here and let's do it. All right, so let's do this. Boop. Oh no. This did not go all the way down. There we go. And let's zoom into this guy here. So I'm going to title this guy here. Probably should have titled it. This is COT 3100 Lab 1 attempt. All right. And then let's double space this. All double spaced. Boop, 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 boop. All right, so we want to, the first question we're going to answer is the following. Okay. We want to know what propositions and potentially any complex propositions can we make prior to hearing the statements from Alice, Bob, and Carol. So before we hear these statements about Bob is confused, Alice and us helpful, if Alice is lying, then I am helpful statements. We want to know what we can say just based off our conditions here, or what we could call assumptions. So first off, what's a proposition? And just as a quick refresher, so we can make sure that we're all on the same page, a proposition is simply any declarative statement that has a truth value to it. Either you can answer definitively it's true or false. For example, the statement pigs can fly is a proposition because there's a truth value to it. It's either true or false. I think in the real world it's false, hopefully. But as I said, a proposition is a declarative statement that is either true or false. Pretty simple. So we want to create propositions where or that we can say based off of these statements here. Well, typically what we're going to do is we're going to create the notice here we're saying first off 1% is helpful and will always tell the truth. 1% is unhelpful, will always lie. 1% is confused and will say random statements that can be truths or lies. So notice that we're not talking about anything specific. So notice that these statements, the numbered statements, are very generalized. They're not targeted towards any of the three individuals we have, i.e., Alice, Bob, and Carol. So because they're very generalized, we're going to create essentially what are called, as a result, we want to create something known as a predicate. Because the idea is that depending on who the person is, it will either become a true statement or a false statement. Depending on who's helpful, that's probably either true, who knows. We don't know who's helpful, we don't know who's unhelpful, we don't know who's confused, at least right now. So right now we just want to create a predicate where we could have the potential to essentially store essentially like a value into it. In this case, our value being one of the three individuals. So let's create some predicates based off that are based off our universe. And in our universe, someone has to be helpful, someone has to be unhelpful, someone has to be confused. So we know, so those are all things that are declarative statements, but they don't have the truth value unless we know who the person is. So those are kind of like our predicates. So my first predicate is, for example, well, we can say let h of x be be equivalent to the statement that x is helpful. And what we're saying here is that instead of saying, saying who is helpful, we can just say instead h of x. Because mathematicians are lazy. Yay, laziness. So now we can say, so now we know how to say h of x, how to say someone is helpful. Now we want to also do the same thing for unhelpful and confused. So typically, at least personally for me, I just use the first letter of every kind of like attribute that I want to store into a predicate. So for example, helpful starts with an H, so I'm just using h of x. In this case, I'm just going to say the next thing I could say is u of x. That's going to say x is unhelpful. And then we're going to have one more. We're going to say, well, I can't use c of x because c also is okay. Well, let's say for this one, co of x is the statement that x is confused. All right. So now we have that. So now we've defined helpful, how to say helpful, how to say unhelpful, and how to say confused. But that's not the only thing that those are not the only attributes that we have in this universe. Just because they're helpful, unhelpful, and confused, that's not the only thing. We also have people who can tell the truth, and we can have people who lie. And we want to represent that. So we're going to create two more predicates, one for telling the truth, one for telling a lie. So what we're going to say is let t of x be the statement that x is telling the truth. And then we're going to say let L of x, the statement that x is not x is y. And these are the predicates that we can create, or the propositions that we can essentially create just without the statements that we hear from Alice, Bob, and Carol. And so that's pretty much a good start for number one. So now we need to know, we need to create some well, those are predicates, but now we need to create some propositions off of these. So now we actually need to translate these things into English. Man, I forgot how sometimes annoying these things are. So now we need to translate each of the numbered statements into English. So now we need to say, how do we say essentially 1% is helpful and will always tell the truth? Well, I know that there is a person who's helpful. If a person is helpful, so for the first statement, I know that a helpful person is supposed to tell the truth. So essentially, I have that if someone is helpful, they're telling the truth, that tells me that there is a implication happening. So I know that the first statement really just turns into h of x implies t of x, because they're telling the truth. And so that tells me that, hey, we're essentially saying that if someone is helpful, then they are essentially telling the truth. Now, for the second statement, we have that an unhelpful person will always lie. Well, if you're unhelpful, officially, you're supposed to lie. So we know that if you are unhelpful, supposedly, you must lie. And for the third statement, because that's another one as well, we can say that if you are a confused person, then either you are telling the truth or lying. They are kind of confused, so it doesn't matter. So we say for this one, we can say t of x or L of x for that one. And so those are three propositions that we can also make based off of these things. And we can also create another proposition, that being that if we tell the truth, we cannot lie. And if we lie, we cannot be telling the truth. So since we're going in both directions, we're really having some sort of a by implication behavior. So what we can say is essentially if what the person or person X is telling the truth if and only if they are not lying. So if they are not lying, they must be telling the truth, and if they are telling the truth, they must not be lying. So t of x, by implication, not L of x. And these are some of the complicated propositions that we can make based off of this universe without these statements, which are pretty straightforward, I would believe, but nevertheless, they are still a pretty difficult thing. So that takes care of the first question. Now we need to make propositions based off the statements of Alice, Bob, and Carol. So what propositions can we make using the testimonies, essentially? Testimonies. There we go. Thank you, Wood. Testimonies from Alice, Bob, and Carol. Well, we can only take them at their word if they are telling the truth. So each of these people, each of these individuals are telling the truth, or we take them at their word only if they're telling the truth. So for example, we can only take Alice's statement at face value if and only if she is telling the truth. So Alice's statement is saying that Bob is confused. So since Alice's statement is the fact that Bob is confused, we can say that Bob is confused if and only if, and I want to zoom, let's do that, little zoom out there. If and only if Alice is telling the truth. Because if Alice is lying, why would we ever take Bob's statement at face value? All right, so now we know that part. So since we have the statement in symbols, this turns into the following. So we have that this turns into T of Alice, because now we're not just talking about some random person X, we're talking specifically about Alice. So anytime we're talking about a specific person, we should replace our variable that we created in the original predicate, in our case X, we should replace that with Alice. So T of Alice, by implication, because of if and only if, and then we're trying to say that Bob is confused. So that would be CO, because that's how we represent X, the confused behavior. And inside the parentheses, we would create Bob. So that's our first proposition, which is interesting, to say the least. But now we have to do it 2 more times, because Alice is not the only person who could be telling the truth. Bob could be telling the truth. Carol could be telling the truth. So repeating this for the other two individuals, we have that if Bob is we know that Bob is telling the truth if and only if Carol is Alice is unhelpful. So unhelpful is you, and inside the parentheses we want to put in Alice's name, because we're talking specifically about Alice being unhelpful, not X being unhelpful. So so this is our second statement here. Oops. Nope, I don't want to print the screen. And this guy here is our first statement. All right, so now that takes care of that one, and now we have Carol's to take care of. So Carol is telling the truth, so T of Carol, if and only if, because if and only if the following is true. If Alice is lying, then I am helpful. Well, that the if then tells me that there's an implication going on. Alice is lying, that means L of Alice. And we know that there's an implication there, because that's the if then key phrase there. And we're trying to say I am helpful with I representing Carol. So we're trying to say H, because H is the helpful trait. That's what we said above in here. So we're trying to say H of Carol. This is our third statement here. So those are just, so based specifically off of what they're saying, we know that this has to be the true statement. And I actually remembered something. There is something we should also clear up for number 1 as well. We can create not just another proposition, we can create multiple new propositions. We also based off our logic, like this completely slipped it off my mind, we also know that one person needs to be helpful, one person needs to be useful, not useful, unhelpful, one person needs to be confused. So we can say to say all of this, we know that for the one person to be helpful, we know that there are three people in our universe. There are essentially Alice, Bob, and Kale. One of those three individuals needs to be helpful, so we know that either one of Alice or Bob or Carol needs to be helpful. We for the one person needs to be unhelpful. We know that it's going to be U of Alice or U of Bob or U of Carol. And then for the one person needs to be confused because one only exactly one person has to fit each role. Since there are three people and three roles, one has to go to every role. We can say CO of Alice or CO of Bob or CO of Carol. And I'm going to actually do some color coding, and because I want to specify something important. All that the fact that let's do this. So we want to color code that guy. Nope, no one color code that whole thing. No, so let's color code this part here. We're going to color code this here, this guy, this guy, and all these guys here. Bam. And what I want to do is that what I'm trying to emphasize with these red statements, any statement that is essentially red, so there's H of any those are essentially our propositions. All those propositions are assumptions. We have to assume that all these are true. Note that all these statements in red are all assumed to be happening simultaneously, i.e., they are our assumptions for this scenario. So we have to assume that they all are all happening simultaneously at the same time. All right. So now we got that. Now we know we have Alice's we have their statements based off what they're saying. Statement right here. So let's put these guys in red as well, because they also should be assumptions as well. Let's see. Is there anything else we can say? I want to make sure that we are covering all our grounds here. So we have H of Alice or H of Bob. All right. I think that covers everything. All right. So that should be that. Now we have to go on to the hard part of this lab, or the harder part of this lab, unfortunately, which is that we need to narrow down, if it's possible, the possible universes, i.e., is it possible for us to determine who's the helpful person, who's the unhelpful person, and who's the confused person? So our question is it possible to find out who is helpful, unhelpful, and who is confused? And simply put, the answer is yes. And if so, is there at least one possible universe? Simply put, there is a way. Yeah. So, and there is a way to figure this out. Truth tables. We're gonna have to bust out a truth table for this. So this one is not gonna be your typical truth table. We're gonna have to kind of manipulate it a little bit, for lack of a better words. So this is gonna sound a little bit crazy. I hope YouTube or wherever I upload this does not flag me down. But essentially, we're gonna have to create a table with 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 rows and columns. We don't know actually how many rows we have, but and we don't know how many columns we have. So let's actually just make the table. So I'm just gonna spitball this one for now. And we'll adjust as needed. So what we need have here is that in this scenario, everyone is assigned what I want to call a role, i.e., we are telling someone, hey, you're going to be designated as helpful, you're going to be designated as unhelpful, you're designated as confused. The idea is that we're essentially, oh, I hate this term, but pre-programming Alice, Bob, and Carol to have certain behaviors, i.e., we're going to program Alice to be potentially helpful in one universe. We're going to program Bob to be helpful in another universe, etc., etc., etc. And what we're going to see is if they are essentially acting in accordance with the behaviors that their roles are intending. So, for example, if Alice is helpful, is she telling the truth? If Bob is supposed to be lying, is he lying to us? If Carol is confused, are they telling us statements that are truths or lies? So we're going to have actually 6 columns here. The first column is going to be Alice's role. We're going to have the second column be Bob's role, and we're going to have the third column be Carol's role. And then for the fourth column, we're going to have this be I'm gonna have to zoom out on this one a little bit. Carol's role, we're gonna need this one to be Alice's statement, because we're gonna have to evaluate Alice's statement whether or not it's a true or false. We're gonna have to evaluate Bob's statement, whether or not it's true or false, and we're gonna have to evaluate Carol's statement and see whether it's true or false. Now we're gonna have to assign each of them a role. So Alice could be helpful. So one universe that we could have is that Alice is helpful, Bob is unhelpful, and Carol is confused. Notice that I did not have all 3 of them be helpful. I can't have all 3 of them be helpful because only one person can be helpful. No one, and only one. We can't have 2 people be helpful. We can't have 3 people be helpful. So that's why it's sort of like a truth table, but it's a little bit modified because we have to adjust our truth table according to the constraints that our universe is putting on us. But the reason why a truth table is still useful is it's going to help us map out all the possible universes, and then we're going to narrow it down based off whether or not essentially the individuals, Alice, Bob, and Carol, are acting in accordance with the behaviors that we pre-programmed them to be. This makes me sound like a supervillain. Man, I'm satisfying every stereotype of CS/IT major. So that's one universe that we could be in. We could also be in a universe where Alice is still helpful, but we reversed out Bob and Carol as well. So we could have Bob be confused, and we could have Carol be the unhelpful person. We can, but that's not the only 2 universes we have. Just because Alice is helpful doesn't mean Alice can never be confused or unhelpful. We should also consider those universes. So we know Alice has to be unhelpful, and we can say that Bob is the helpful person and Carol is the confused individual. Or we could reverse Bob and Carol again. So Alice stays unhelpful, but now Bob becomes a confused person, and all of a sudden Carol becomes the helpful individual. And the final one that we want to final universes we want to look at is where Alice is the confused one. So Alice can be confused, Bob can be unhelpful, and Carol can be helpful, or Alice can be confused, Bob is the helpful person, and Carol is the unhelpful person. So now, well, we made sure that we've taken into account all our possible universes, because If I try to think of any other universe, I can't go past this because anything else would be either redundancy or it would not be possible in the case of like having multiple people be the same role. So I know that I've covered every single possible universe that this scenario is allowing me to have. Okay, so now we have our roles. Now we need to make sure that everyone's acting in accordance with their behaviors. So let's take a look at these statements. So Alice's statement says that Bob is confused. So let's take a look here. In this universe, Bob is supposedly unhelpful. Well, Alice said that Bob is confused, but that's not the case. So we know that Alice lied to us because the idea is that she was supposed to identify that Bob is confused. But clearly Bob is not confused from our perspective, which is the omnipotence perspective. This is not making me look any better. Man, I suck at this. But from the omnipotence perspective, we know that Bob is not confused. He is unhelpful in this universe. Now, the question, the $1,000,000 question becomes, is that a good thing or a bad thing that Alice lied? The answer is, it's a bad thing that Alice lied. We call to the fact that if the person is helpful, they're supposed to be telling the truth. So since Alice is lying, she's not always telling the truth. That is a bad thing. That is a bad thing. Since it's a bad thing, I don't really need to care about this universe here because what does it matter if Bob and Carol are acting in accordance with their behaviors? Everyone is supposed to be acting in accordance with their behaviors. Since one person is not acting in accordance with their behaviors, we don't care about Bob and Carol's statement. We can straight up just eliminate this universe right here and now and move on to the next one. I am going to denote bad universes, quote unquote, bad universes are where someone are universes where someone is not acting in accordance with their assigned behavior. Bad universes are denoted in blue. And good universe, and I'm going to define a good universe are where are universes where everyone is acting in accordance with their assigned behavior. And good universes are denoted in let's say green. Let's say green. So we're gonna have this be so the bad universes are blue, or light blue, I guess. Let's say light blue. And then we're gonna have green be the good universes. Green means go. And so now we just have to go through every possible universe and make sure that it works out. All right, so we have our next universe which is where Alice is unhelpful. Alice is helpful, Bob is confused, and Carol is unhelpful. Well, let's see here. So if Alice is helpful, her statement is supposedly that Bob is confused. Well, in this universe, she's telling the truth because it is the case that Bob is confused. Is it a good thing that she's telling the truth? Yeah, it is a good thing that she's telling the truth because she's a helpful person. So this is a good thing. Now we move on to Bob's statement. Bob's statement is that Alice is unhelpful. In this universe, we know that Bob is the confused individual, and we know confused individuals are going to say random statements that are either truths or lies. In this universe, it is not the case that Alice is unhelpful. Alice is actually helpful, so we know Bob is lying to us. Is it a good thing that Bob lied to us? It turns out that yes, it is a good thing that Bob lied to us. He's acting in accordance with what a confused person does. Either he's saying random things that are either truths or lies. as long as it's easily identifiable that the statement has some sort of truth value, then we know that Bob is acting in accordance with his role, which he is doing. Now, we move on to Kale's statement. Kale is going to tell us that if Alice is lying, then I am helpful. Well, in this universe, Alice did not lie to us. Alice actually is telling the truth. So then that if Alice is telling the truth, then I'm helpful. Well, as stated previously, Alice did not lie. Alice is telling the truth in this universe. So we know that this is, if you want to imagine it, imagine that it's false implies the statement essentially H of Carol. But since the precondition is false in an implication, it doesn't matter whether or not Carol is helpful or not. Because if Carol is helpful, then it's false implies true, which is true. And if Carol is not helpful, then it's false implies false, which is also true. This is the idea of what is called vacuously true. It's where it doesn't matter whether or not the postcondition is true or false, because we already have determined that the precondition will never happen. And in this case, there's nothing in the contract in this contract statement that says what happened if Alice is not lying. So since it's false implies really anything, we know that false implies anything is a true statement. So it actually turns out that Carol is telling the truth. Is it a good thing that Carol is telling us the truth? In this scenario, unfortunately, it's a bad thing that she's telling us the truth. Carol is supposed to be unhelpful. Unhelpful people are supposed to always lie. So we have to denote this universe as a blue universe as well, because unfortunately, Carol told us the truth, logically speaking. Remember, they're all logical thinkers. So when we say logically speaking, this is what we mean. So we'll say, I'll also put into the context. Technically, this is false implies false, which is true. False because Alice is not lying. False because Carol is not helpful. And false implies false is a true statement. All right, so that takes care of that universe. Now we move on to the universe where Alice is unhelpful, Bob is helpful, and Carol is confused. So in this universe, let's start off with Alice again. Alice says that Bob is confused. In this universe, Bob is not confused. He is actually the helpful person. So Alice lied to us. Is it a good thing that Alice lied to us? It turns out that is a good thing to that Alice lied to us. This is a good thing, because the idea is that she incorrectly identified the fact that Bob is confused. And unhelpful people are supposed to lie, so she's acting in accordance with her behaviors. So that's a good thing. We move on to Bob's statement. Bob tells us that Alice is unhelpful. Is Alice unhelpful? According to this universe, it is. On the case that Alice is unhelpful, Bob is telling us the truth. This is a good thing, because helpful people are supposed to tell the truth, and Bob helps us identify that Alice is unhelpful in this universe. And then the final statement is Carol saying, if Alice is lying, then I am helpful. Well, in this universe, we know that Alice is telling us the truth. Well, not Alice is telling us the truth. Alice is lying. We know that Alice lied, so we know the left-hand side of the implication is going to be true. We know that the right-hand side is going to be false, because Kale is not the helpful person in this universe. Kale is the confused person. So in this universe, Kale is this is going to be true implies false, and this is the situation where we do our homework, but we don't go to Disney, i.e., the contract is violated. That tells me that true implies false is false, which means Kale lied to us. Is it a good thing that Kale lied to us? Turns out that yes, it is a good thing that Kale lied to us, because she came up with a random statement that is either a truth or a lie. She came up with a proposition statement. So this is a good thing. So since all three are acting in accordance with the behaviors here, we know that this universe should be denoted in the green color, because we have three goods across the statement columns, which is a fantastic thing. So we know that that's a possible universe we could find ourselves in. Let's see if this universe is can be also marked in green. In the fourth universe, we know that Alice is unhelpful, and she identifies that Bob is confused based on her statement that she gives us, her alibi. And it turns out that in this universe, Bob is confused. That means Alice is telling us the truth. Is it a good thing that she's telling the truth? Not in this universe. This is actually a bad thing that she's telling us the truth in this universe, because unhelpful people are supposed to lie. So since unhelpful people are supposed to lie, it is a bad thing that she's telling us the truth. This universe should be marked in blue. And we don't care. We can say that this is a don't care here. And we can also say that this is a don't care here. Don't care, and a don't care, because it should not be the case. Because we don't care whether or not Bob and Carol are telling the truth or lying, because Alice is not acting in accordance with her behaviors, so that universe all goes to the wayside. Now we jump to the fifth universe where Alice is confused. Alice tells us that Bob is confused. Well, Alice is the one who's confused, and Bob is unhelpful. So Alice is lying to us because Bob is not the confused person. Is it a good thing that she's lying to us in this scenario? Yeah, it's a good thing that she's lying to us because she's giving us a proposition statement. It either is true or false. Since it's a lie, it's either a lie, it's good. That's a good thing because it's a proposition. So good. Bob is the unhelpful person in this universe, and he says that Alice is confused, or not Alice is confused. Alice is unhelpful. Is it a good? Is Alice confused in this universe, or is Alice unhelpful in this universe? The answer is no. Alice is not unhelpful in this universe. She is confused in this universe. So again, Bob lied to us. Is it a good thing that Bob lied to us? It is a good thing that Bob lied to us because unhelpful people are supposed to lie. So we know that he's acting in accordance with his behaviors. Finally, we're going to have Carol be the helpful person. Carol says that if Alice is lying, then I'm helpful. We know that in this universe, Alice did lie. So the left-hand side of the implication statement is true. And we know that the right-hand side is also true because it is the case that Carol is helpful. So in this universe, so we have that true implies true. That is a true statement. This is the scenario where I did my homework and I got to go to Disney. So the contract is upheld. So Carol is telling the truth in this universe. And it is a good thing that Carol is telling us the truth because helpful people are supposed to tell the truth. So we know that this universe also should be marked in green because we have three goods across the board in this universe, which is fantastic. Finally, we have our last universe, which is where Alice is confused, Bob is helpful, and Carol is unhelpful. In this, so one more time, Alice says that Bob is confused. In this universe, Bob is not confused. He is the helpful person. So Alice lied to us. And again, it's a good thing that Alice lied to us because confused people either tell the truth or lie to us. So since Alice did one of those two, it's a good thing. She's acting in accordance with her behavior. Bob, now we move on to Bob's statement. Bob's statement says that Alice is unhelpful. Alice is not unhelpful in this universe. She is the confused person. So Bob lied to us in this universe. And unfortunately, this go around, it is not a good thing that Bob lied to us. Helpful people are supposed to lie. Helpful people are supposed to be telling the truth. They're not supposed to lie. So since Bob is not acting in accordance with his behavior, we know that this universe is going to be universe that is marked in blue. So this universe gets marked in blue. And we don't care about Carol's role, if Carol's telling the truth or not, because someone already has acted out of touch with their role, so we don't care about if Carol is telling the truth or not. So based off of this, we do have, so based off this truth table, any universe, which means any row that is marked in green is a possible universe that we can find ourselves in. So can we narrow down the possible universes? Yes. So this means that there are two possible universes for this scenario to be played out. And that's the lab. So I hope this explanation helped a little bit, and we'll upload this to both Professor Mead's web course along with my Discord. I hope this video helped out a little bit more. And if you guys have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask me. I will do my best to explain as much as I can physically. And yeah, thank you guys for tuning in, and I will see you guys on the next one. Until then, see you guys around.